Hello and welcome to Pipes in a Battle, where I will try to discuss a historical battle in a few minutes or less. What I have here is my trusty Meerschaum pipe, hand-carved, and smoking a nice aromatic called Blue Note. So, to start off, I want to talk about the Battle of Fredericksburg in the American Civil War. Now, this battle took place December 11th through the 15th of 1862, but the permanent action takes place on December 13th primarily. So the context to this battle is the Civil War had been raging for about a year and a half now at this point, and after a few failed previous Union attempts to capture Richmond, Virginia, the capital of the Confederacy, they placed Ambrose Burnside in charge with the goal of capturing this city. Now, Ambrose was a interesting individual. That's where we get the name for Burnsides, as a hair design, and he decided that the best way he was going to go capturing Richmond was to go directly as the crow flies. So, tracking, modern day I-95 today, he went from DC straight down to Richmond. It's about a 2-hour car drive now. 1862, it probably would have taken you, a little less than 3 weeks maybe to march it. So, the Confederates get wind of this movement and move to block Burnside's army at Fredericksburg, which is about halfway between Richmond and D.C. And the Union forces were arrayed with about 122,000 men, greatly outnumbering the Confederates, who had about 78,000. But it is worth noting that this is one of the few Civil War battles where Lee had both his right and left arm, as he referred to Stonewall Jackson and James Longstreet. So, numbers be damned, Lee had a pretty formidable set of military geniuses by his side. So the battle begins with the Union forces needing to cross the Rappahannock to get into Fredericksburg themselves. They were harassed by, Confederate snipers and some street fighting, but Lee wasn't going to have this be the main focus of the battle. It was merely to just delay and annoy the Union forces as they crossed the Rappahannock. The battle proper began when the Union made a probe on the Confederates' right flank under the command of Stonewall Jackson at Prospect Hill. Now, the Confederates had some slight elevation, and they had protection from the trees. It's a pretty wooded area. Now, the Union had to cross bogland, if you will. It was a little swampy, but mostly open ground. And they did this on the morning of the 13th. Now, they had met with, some success. They were able to get into the woods of Prospect Hill in some capacity, but it was mostly a stalemate. However, as I mentioned earlier, the Union had numerical superiority. And if Burnside had committed his reserves to this initial push, he probably would have been able to take Prospect Hill and make the Confederate position untenable. But just as battle was joined and it was quite fierce, Burnside decided to halt the attack, not commit reserves there quick enough, and focus his attention on the left flank command of the Confederates, commanded by Longstreet, at a place called Mary's Height. Now, if you go to Fredericksburg today, you can still see the commanding position that Mary's Heights offered. There was a stone wall at Mary's Height that provided protection, and essentially on a slight gradient going for about 1.5 miles, you can see all the way down into Fredericksburg proper. So it was here that the Union committed their push, and it was an absolute disaster. They committed, in total, about 7 divisions piecemeal, marching in open ground, a mile and a half, on a slight incline against these entrenched Confederates at Marye's Heights. They were torn apart by rifle fire, they were torn apart by artillery fire, and the closest any of their units got to the heights themselves was about 40 yards. It was an abject disaster, completely crushed the spirit and initiative of the Union Army, and after December 13th, they had to withdraw, suspend their operations, and abandon the campaign for Richmond. So, a couple things about this battle, though, that are interesting is the kill-death ratio for the Confederates at Marye's Heights was about 8-1. I mean, it was a cold December day. The Union really stood no chance. Committing their forces piecemeal did them no great credit. And it actually is where one of Robert E. Lee's famous quotes come from. It is well that war is so terrible, or we should grow too fond of it. He made this comment as he was watching the carnage unfold. All in all, it was a fairly major Confederate victory on the strategic sense, not necessarily on the technical sense. Casualties were about 12,000 for the Union, 5K for the Confederates, which the majority of those occurring at Prospect Hill. But strategically, it was once again another failed campaign to capture Richmond, and it bought the Confederates time, and it fit into the overall strategic plan that Lee and particularly Longstreet had of fight a defensive war, parry their attempts to capture Richmond, and eventually they will lose the stomach to fight. So thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Let me know what you think in the comments and what other battles you'd like us to discuss.